Archives of Prasar Bharati presents the timeless treasure of golden era.
Soumitra, we are moving into another territory now. Soon after you made your mark in cinema, you started something very different, your literary periodical Ekon with Nirmalu Achachu. We'd like to know a little bit about how it started and what were your ideas when launching this very distinctive periodical.
You know, Shomik, most of us, our group, were students of literature. Most of them of Bengali literature, some of them of English literature too, like Gogunda. And we all had literary aspirations as well. Some writing poetry, some writing short stories, some even attempting to write a novel. So we all felt the need of having a platform of our own where we could publish our own writings. It was very difficult at that time to send our poems or short stories to established big newspapers and magazines. But there were little magazines where we could send, but even there, somehow the little magazines those days mostly, except a very few like Porichoy and Chuturango, Ogroni, most of them lived a very short life. Maybe after a few issues they would be extinct. So we were always thinking of bringing out a magazine in the line of Porichoy for a long time. After our endeavor to sort of being associated with a few little magazines coming to a very end, we were seriously thinking of how to bring about a magazine of our own. One day when we were coming back from coffee house at night, myself, Nirmalu and my wife Deepa, Nirmalu said that he is going to publish a magazine this time and he's determined, but he had one condition, that he would get me as his co-editor. I said I have a different condition, that if you say, okay, I will bring out it single-handedly, I will be always with you to the last day. We were uselessly wasting time in arguing over the matter. My wife gave a sort of a veto. She said that now you have been wanting to bring out a magazine. Now this is the opportunity. Why you are arguing? You agree to Nirmalu's proposal and then bring out good paper. That's how it all started. So it was somehow not accidental. It was always in our mind. And the first few people we consulted about the magazine was Satyajit Ray, who in fact gave the name Action. I went to him. Nirmalu didn't know Manikda very well at that time. I went to Manikda and said that please supply us with a name. He said, come day after tomorrow. He gave 10 names according to priority, and Action was the first one, and both Nirmalu and myself, we liked the name. I mean, I used to talk to him about the future list of writers, and he suggested a few names like Kamal Kumar Majumdar, Soumitra Chattopadhyay. I didn't know Kamal Majumdar personally at all, and I have read only Qaid Khana in Porichoy, maybe another one paper. So I said, what is he as a writer? How would you rate him? He said, Kamal Majumdar, he knows all the arts. And that's what Satyajit Ray said. And said, Bengali is the most experimental writing of modern times. Then we contacted Kamal Majumdar and he wrote in the very first issue. We also were very closely associated with Arun Mitro, the poet. His son was one of our group. Ranadhir.
And Arunda was then in Allahabad.
Yeah, he came back by that time. And he sort of gave us invaluable advices what to do and what not to do. Then the actual publishing, when it had to be published, Nirmal actually saw the printing and the press, everything. He was very good at it, and he was very diligent also. And I had to see the poetry section totally, and the rest we both shared. I mean, he would read one thing or I would read one thing and then give him to read it again and then decide what to publish. That's how we discovered Malini Bhattacharya, whose very first poem came out in action, I believe. Mrinalini Ghoshalit Shob. Arun Mitra gave us a very good suggestion. He said that there should be also some issues which would not contain a kind of a
Mixed bag.
It should be focused on one particular issue. Like, say, we published Dante issue. Then
You published a very good Marx issue.
Marx issue as well.
A Shakespeare issue.
A Shakespeare issue and one particular issue on rivers.
Yes.
So that's how we started.
But I believe you also had a role to play in gathering the advertisements.
Yes, in the beginning, it was entirely my effort because I was well known by that time as a film actor. I sort of exploited that. And I went from big corporate houses from one to other, and they would oblige me with an ad. But later on, as Econ sort of grew in reputation, this became easier, and Nirmal by that time sort of developed a kind of a network of contacting various agencies and various corporate houses, not only in Kolkata but also in Delhi and in Bombay. And he handled it very well, very, very well. That's how it continued for a very long time. But later, much later, about after 20 years or so, well, the difficulties of jointly editing a paper.
The problem that you had raised right at the beginning, anyway.
Yeah.
That it had to be a one-man affair.
So, because the views started clashing, and even there were some happenings which was not to my liking, like some article I have discarded was printed against my wish, or some story I didn't even know that is going to be published was published, and things like that. And then I said to Nirmala that, well, this is not working, you better do it single-handed. And I came out.
I think your first published play appeared in Econ.
Is that Rajkumar?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and also, no, even before that.
Even before that, there was
One Breast.
One Brecht you translated, which was The Exception and the Rule.
Exception and the Rule,
With
yes.
your Betikram.
This Exception and the Rule again was given to me by Shishir Bhaduri.
Okay.
And I sort of translated and adapted. But he was not very happy about the adaptation. He said, you are too close to the original. You should have gone farther away from that.
Your playwriting begins around this time in the 60s?
Yes, more or less, yes. You are right. That too, because from that time onward, I was seriously trying to be in the theatre. And for getting a play, I had to depend on my own ability to sort of adapt plays from foreign sources. Because there was no playwright amongst us, no one. And those who were either not willing or not in a position to give us plays. So for our group, I had to start doing that.
When did you form this group?
Almost simultaneously with start publishing of Econ.
Okay.
But it didn't last long. Later on, when I started real serious work in the theatre, meaning that I joined the public theatre in Kolkata, then the question of getting plays was even more important. The first one, Nam Jibon, which I directed, was not really adapted by me. It was an adaptation of a West Indian play, The Moon on a Rainbow Shawl, you must be remembering, and it was adapted by Deepa, my wife. They had a group, theatre group by that time, and she was trying to feed the group with that play. But the group never could perform, do it. Later on, when I joined the public theatre, I thought this is real good stuff for a beginning, which would be something absolutely away from the usual routine stuff, as well as a lot of entertainment and arresting plot line to hold the audience. So I just brushed it up a little bit, changed a few scenes only, but it is basically the writing of my wife Deepa. But from then on, every time I had to put a play on this stage, I had to adopt some foreign plays, American or French or German, whatever it may be. Only once I got an original play to perform, that was from Manoj Mitra, Darpane Sharat Shuchi.
Namjibun was a runaway success in the professional theatre, though it was a departure in terms of acting, departure in terms of the text, departure even in terms of the scenography. Great scenography, and your use of the scenography, of the levels, of the spaces, everything came into place, and a complete departure from what the professional theatre had been doing. Now, in the making of Namjibun, how did it happen? What were the equations between the producer, whoever was producing it, you, your choice of actors, because you had obviously had quite a lot of freedom in having such wonderful
the whole thing
cast.
happened like this. This producer, Haridas Sanyal, was introduced to me by Ashok Mitra, one of our co-actors, a friend of mine. And Haridas Sanyal was a very peculiar man in this respect, that he said that I want to listen to the script first. I read it out to him. And he said, this is a wonderful script. I am sure this will run in the public theatre. Instead of saying that, oh no, this is too
esoteric or different.
No, he was completely convinced from the very beginning. And then he said that you have all the freedom to put it on the stage as you like to, except I have a few requests. I said, what are they? He said that I have some very needy actors in my payroll. So if you use them, if you can, I'm not insisting, but if you can, I shall be happy. I said, okay, this adjustment I can do, and I did that. There were some actors who were already in that theatre, and the rest I recruited, whoever I thought would be best. Ashok Mitra, again, was in the midway, where he was there in the theatre, and he was my friend, my choice too. Nirmal Ghosh was my choice. There was one Sucheta Das.
Who was remarkable there.
She was remarkable in that play. I saw her in one of Bibhash's theatre in Noroguljar, and I thought I must get that actress. So that's how I collected them and put on the play. And naturally I wanted Taposda. He did a magnificent job of lighting. And the set, as usual, I initially sort of, in my very poor sketching ability, I sketched it in my exercise book and showed it to Suresh Datto, and he said, it is fine, I will construct a set out of that. I said, of what material? He said, well, the usual set material. I said, no, that won't do. I need plaster of Paris material. He said, it is absolutely absurd. I said, why? He said, because if you make a set of plaster of Paris, you will not be able to preserve it. You will have to dismantle after every show, and it will start getting spoiled. It will break down very soon. Then I said, what is the answer of then making this brickwork, and he said, I shall do it with paper pulp. I had no idea what kind of work can be done with paper pulp. So I said, show me a sample in 7 days' time. So he made a piece of 6 feet by 6 feet of that paper pulp, and it was beautiful. I said, but it has to be weathered. He said, we shall paint it like the weeds and things like that. No painting will do. I learned it from Bongshi Chandragupta. So I bought a burner, and I myself went on for 3 days putting that burner every corner of the set and burning the bricks in that shape and all that. So that's how the set was very good. I think you remember Utpalda wrote a review of that play in Epic Theatre. That's how I started writing for the theatre. Well, in the meanwhile, I have written a few original plays as well, or almost originals. The thing is that I can't, in the beginning, construct a plot line, because my profession is so engaging and so, time consuming that I hardly get time to write. I have to, amidst my work in the studios and other activities. So it becomes easier for me if I get a kind of a plot line borrowed from a foreign source, and I find a few things, situations, which are universal, which can be applied. Then I reconstruct the whole thing. I recreate the whole thing, I should say. So I can't call myself a playwright full-fledged, but, I have written for the theatre.
But I've often wondered, now you have, in very rare cases, those are more exceptions than the rule, chosen real theatre classics as such. Of course, you have done Ghosts, but that's different. But otherwise, it's not necessarily the classics, but somehow the second level works, not the first rate works. So
You're right.
It was Big Knife, For Your Rajkumar by Ordre, or even lesser known plays that you take on and you transform. So was it a deliberate choice at one point that the classics do not allow for the freedom that you can enjoy when you're working
to
with
modernize
the other kind of
them?
Yes.
In an adaptation, the kind of freedom that I need to recreate, to transform maybe sometimes the very essence of the play. So that can't be done with a classic. For instance, the Ghost, as you mentioned, Ghost is a translation. It's not even an adaptation that I did. And I have never been able to touch my dream play, that is a Shakespeare play. When I was young...
What's your special dream play of Shakespeare?
Once it was Hamlet. Once.
Now it's Lear?
I'm much past that age now.
Now it's Lear?
Now it's King Lear. I must do it someday before I lose, before this distracted globe does not allow me to do so.
When you try to put on your plays, your plays or your adaptations, whatever you call them, there have been times where you're not working with a professional company, but trying to bring people together. Say there was a phase when you were doing plays for Abhinitra Shanko, where film actors who were not generally in the theatre, you would bring them together for performances. How did these work?
The Abhinitra Shanko phase of my theatre career was rather, I would call it my workshop period.
Okay.
In the sense that we were putting on plays by various actors engaged in film and in theatre to sort of raise funds for the benevolent work that we were doing from Abhinitra Shanko. But those plays and the productions were banal, to say the least. So I said, where the Abhinitra Shanko is the association of the best professionals of the country. Why don't you put on good productions? So I started directing plays. Firstly, not directing plays, but inviting the best directors like Ajitesh, Ganesh Da, some of them, Utpal Da.
Ajitesh did Andhajug.
Ajitesh did Andhajug. Utpal Da did Krushbiddu Kuba. And I was also forced in to direct. So I started with Ghosts. But I used that opportunity to sort of getting prepared for the public theatre when I can launch my real good productions. So I was practicing, I was experimenting, I was learning what to do and what not to do. So when I started with Nam Jibon, by that time I was ready as a director. And, you know, in Nam Jibon, I must say, from Nam Jibon onward till today, as a director, I have used myself, or rather my stature as an actor or a star. I sell that to my producer. He takes me as when he gets me as an actor, he is satisfied that his box office is guarded.
So he will take the rest of it.
Yeah.
The way you dictate.
Yeah. And as a director, I do whatever I want. There I don't make any compromise.
Of your work in theatre, post Nam Jibon, I have found Dortmund Shorat Shoshi and Pera, which was from Dürrenmatt, The Visit. From that phase, the most important, the most significant. What were you really trying to do in this phase? Did you have a kind of a plan of creating a kind of theatre? Because by then there were directors in the Bangla theatre, in the non-professional theatre, who had a certain conception of theatre, a certain design of theatre, a kind of theatre leading on to that. Did you have a perspective like that, or were you just choosing one good, interesting play independently and working on it independently?
Well, certainly the choice of a play is very important in public theatre. That was my place of work. But you are right in detecting a kind of design or a motive behind the productions. I was trying to sort of expand the idioms of the theatre. Public theatre in particular, even the group theatres, for want of money, could not sort of use various kinds of memes.
Explore the potentials of theatre.
Of the theatre. For instance, the very first theatre I did in Nam Jibon, the use of that whole one piece of set going up in the counterweight was absolutely new. I don't think it ever happened. So I was trying to bring in new methods in the language of theatre. That was what I was trying at that time. Now, of course, very recently, I have mellowed down a lot. I would rather have a very simple kind of production style. But interesting. It should be interesting because, after all, the visual is very important in theatre. It's not yatra, that it's only the words. The visual, if the visuals create a monotony, then you have failed. So I keep an eye over that.
And do you have enough, at the given point of time, do you have enough access to, I would say, creative resources, technicians who can give you what you need, what you are demanding? And when you come to the minimal, which has been happening in your more recent productions, you're not going for the Nam Jibon kind of expanse and space. There have to be technicians who take care of small details because every detail becomes much, much more important.
Yeah, you're right.
Do you get those technicians and do you get what you really imagine?
I'm sorry to say that today's technicians are not in the same class as of yesteryear, like Tapo Sen or Khalid Chaudhary.
Or
They
even
were
Suresh at his best.
Suresh Dotto. They were institutions by themselves, and they are so creative, so imaginative. And I could build a kind of rapport with them.
And they could take the challenge that you gave them.
Yeah.
And
They
respond
could
to
take
that.
the challenge, and also they could provoke me to think farther.
And to demand more.
Yeah, to demand more. You don't get a technician of that class anymore. But there are some very good technicians, and at least dedicated ones, who are serious and who are willing to sort of try out things. Like Badullas. He's good. But, the flair, imaginative quality is a different thing.
I have a feeling that two things have come together in a way. Your growth as an actor, your maturity as an actor, having done all these roles, having played with all these roles in cinema and theatre together, which gives you a control over your craft of acting. You can give more now because with all that experience and learning that and accommodating that within yourself at one level, and that you can't expect the scenographer or the lighting designer to add what you call that extra flair. Your recent theatre has been more acting dependent and goes more into the quality of acting, gets more out of acting, out of the performance of the acting, rather than in the total theatre of Namjibon or even Pera or even Darpane Sharat Joshi. Is it true? Do you also feel that?
I would rather agree with you.
And there's greater strain on you as an actor because you have to carry more on your shoulders as an actor.
It is not a strain on me as an actor, because as an actor, it has become more difficult in a way to find new paths, to break open new grounds, but also it has become easier with my experience. Now I know where to send my bullet, what will kill the tiger. That kind of a thing. But what pains me today is that I know that I have to make such simple productions, production-wise, on the theatre-wise, that people will not look at those things but only concentrate on the acting. But total theatre is not only acting. That's the whole problem. There I agree with you. I don't find that quality of production value today. Or the technicians who can deliver such.
Feed your demands and build upon that.
You are right.
I think your last work till now, Atmakatha, is the first time you take on a contemporary Indian play from some other language. Because generally, you have depended on plays from European or American sources. What was special to you in Atmakatha as a play, or were you also, as when we talked about your films, I said that there came a point of time when you were not just acting roles, but you were acting yourself and bringing your own experience, your understanding to it. A lot of that looks like happening around Atmakatha too.
Yes, Shumik. There is a kind of projection of myself in that role that I am playing in Atmakatha. And you would recall how it started. You and I went to Nagpur and saw Mahesh Alkunchawar, and we had long sessions of Adda with him, and he gave me to read this Atmakatha. When I came back to Kolkata, I found this is an ideally suited play for me at this age, at this time of life, because it's a kind of retrospection as well. A writer who is wanting to write, trying to write his autobiography and thinking about his past, analyzing his past, finding so much of falsehood in his past, so much of gap in his perception of life. Well, this happens to everyone who is growing, who has grown, who had been hanging around for 50 years like me. So I thought this is an ideal stuff for me.
And also the question of expression, He, as a writer, wants to express in a way
Yeah.
and can't or won't,
Can't.
or he doesn't know what to do with the experience.
Yeah.
The same happens to an actor.
This same can happen to an actor. So that is one thing. And about selecting an Indian non-Bengali play, this was, I must say, that it was almost a godsend to me, because with my association with you and Mahesh, I knew that I will get a permission to do this play. So I went ahead. Long time back, I have thought that how could I get a play from Vijay Tendulkar or some such Indian writer. It was very difficult for me. I don't know their language. Well, Vijay Tendulkar was available in English translation, all right. But I had no opportunity to get in touch with them or finding. But, say, for instance, for Habib Tanveez, when I saw Charandas Chor, I have wondered if I could someday make a play like that, with the form and everything. But there wasn't any opportunity to get. This opportunity was godsend. Mahesh willingly gave me this play to perform. I'm doing it.
Beyond Atmakatha, what are your new plans
Should I say? Yes, I can.
for the archives, for posterity?
For the archives and for the posterity, yes. I have just returned from England, where I saw a play by Simon Gray and Hugh Whitemore. They have adapted a Simon Gray prose writing, Smoking Diaries, where the play consists in 3 Simons delivering the lines, Simon 1, Simon 2, Simon 3, and one of them is a woman. So this format appealed to me, and sort of I started thinking about making a play in the same line, but not in the same line as in the content. No. Because it is Simon's life and my life is totally different. 2 other cultures, 2 other countries, 2 other kind of experiences, completely different kind of experiences. But this play I have used as writing at least some amount of my autobiography. Some amount, not whole. It's not possible, because it has to remain on the level of a play too. But whatever I have written is true as a fact of my life. Even my today's life, my illnesses, everything I have brought in. That way, I believe it can be a failure, but if seen in the proper light by the audience, this is a new experiment in our theatre, in the sense that till now I can't think of any other play where the theatre has been used as a personal statement. This new play is my personal statement about my life. And I have done it unabashedly, absolutely frontal.
As we come to this question of the personal statement, I think we can move on even to another point now. We have done a fairly comprehensive survey of your work in the different fields of creativity in which you have been involved. From the 50s, when you really come onto the scene as a creative individual, as an artist, you have been, in a way, part of the, call it left-wing, call it progressive cultural movement of the country. You have been part of that. Your connections, your friendships, your involvements, even with individuals, different poets, writers, filmmakers. It has been in that direction, in that area. And you have been witness to, nationally and internationally, a great change, great transformation in that mode of thinking. Thinking for change, thinking for the people, thinking for the underprivileged, the dispossessed, which concern has been with you in your involvement even with political movements from the fringes, but quite often taking a stand, taking a position, not standing apart. Your involvement in this whole making of a democracy which promised certain things and held out certain hopes, nationally, internationally. How do you feel about this changed setting around you right at the given moment, philosophically, as a thinking person?
Well, I have seen walls crumbling, barriers falling down, but not for a happy ending always, like Berlin Wall. It has crumbled. The two Germanys have united. But I have also seen the Soviet crumbling down, Soviet Russia. And the supreme power of the United States of America ruling the earth, the hegemony. They can any moment declare a state terrorist and can attack it, bomb it, carpet bombing like in Afghanistan or in Iraq, whatever they have done. And there is no resistance almost to this. Almost. It's no longer the days of Vietnam when they were defeated. So the fall of ideals, the fall of goals in front of a society, in front of me as an individual, is not new to me. These things are happening. It's not because just of the present phenomenon of the left losing seats in the Lok Sabha polls.
That's only a small symptom.
That's a very small
symptom, nothing more than that.
But things are changing. It's in a melting pot. The culture, for instance, the way it's changing, for me, sometimes it's a fall of ideals. The language that today's young generation is using, mixture of English, Bengali, Hindi, all put together, the kind of ad signs that you find in hoardings, the 2-3 languages, I never thought that this is culture. The theatre that we are going to see, the cinema, everywhere I find a fall of ideal. I won't say that those who are working in the cinema or in the theatre are not intelligent, are not capable. They are. Some of them are very intelligent. Some of them are very capable. But to me, none appeared to have any vision as a Satyajit or a Ritik Ghatak had about cinema. Or however much I disagree with them, with Soumitra or Utpal Datto as in the theatre, man, they had visions that they would like to see their theatre like this or like that. But here I find, at least it appears to me, that they are going ahead without a definite ideal or a definite vision. This is rather painful for me.
How do you envisage any kind of a role? Do you really think that you could write plays, do a different kind of theatre within your capacities, your means, your resources, and take a stand there, take a position, do something towards shifting from this crash of ideals which disturbs you so much?
I'd love to do that, but, after all, it's a play that makes a theatre. Finally, I am not a playwright of that stature to translate my philosophical stance, my ideas about life, about society, about civilization, about art, in terms of a play. Had I had the capacity, the capability, the talent to write a play like that, I would have done the same thing, yes. But No, I have to wait for someone who can write a thing like that for me. তোমার যোগ্য গান বিরচিবে বলে, one who is able to write that song which is worthy of me. I will have to wait.